Hello and welcome to the Euro What, episode number 99 for the week of November 30th, 2020. I'm Mike McComb and I'm joined today by Ben Smith. Hey Ben.
Hey Mike.
We are a pair of Americans trying to make sense of the Eurovision Song Contest. And this week, we'll be talking about the history of the Festivali y Këngës. How's it going, Ben?
You know, it's pretty good, Mike. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was good. It was my first time doing Thanksgiving meal, and my recipes turned out okay. There weren't any disasters. I was quite proud of that. How was yours?
It was good. Like, it was nice doing a much smaller Thanksgiving, and like the nice thing about for the first year of like not doing a Friendsgiving at all is that I have had so many leftovers, and it's been great.
Yes. Yeah, I did not have to cook for the rest of the weekend. We still have a couple of things in the fridge, just like some leftover cranberry sauce and some potatoes and stuff. So little things to snack on. But
I have so many mashed potatoes right now, but like everything else is like slowly getting depleted.
Nice. Yes. I'm at the point now where it's like I need to find like some sort of salad or something to counteract all the
yeah. Oh yeah. Just like my immediate, it's like okay, I need like a green vegetable.
Yes.
And then on Sunday, while walking around doing errands near me, so Cambridge and Somerville have wild turkeys that do because in the 70s they tried to repopulate the turkey population, which was getting depleted. And now now we have city turkeys who will just absolutely mess up your day. And they're also delightful. And while walking around and doing errands near Harvard, one of them popped out of Harvard Yard as though to say, "Hello, I lived."
Wow. Like, are these pets or?
No, these are wild turkeys.
They're wild. Okay.
They are wild turkeys, and they just will, and like it was like the Harvard version of a celebrity sighting.
Okay, yeah.
It is
Take
like
that,
Harvard. That is what maybe you'll see Tyra Banks doing that one business program that takes a weekend. Maybe you'll see a turkey.
Yeah. Can you tell the difference? Let us know. Oh, goodness. And yeah, there's been so much news in the last couple of weeks. Like, I'm kind of surprised at how much organizational stuff has happened. A lot of 2021 contest updates just kind of came like a fire hose after our last episode. So they have decided to use the semifinal allocations that were drawn for this year's contest and have them carry over to next year. All of that organizational stuff has made my life easier as
oh my
keeper
gosh,
of
like
the spreadsheets.
the ESC hit copy paste, and so did we in our little back end. And like at first when I saw the news, and I think this was just because of Love Shine a Light in May, where it's like, but how do we know that Ukraine's going to send a fun closer again? Because they had given us like the theoretical lineups. But it's like, no, it's just the drawing. So it's just the halves of the semifinals, which makes so much sense. Like it doesn't, like, you did that once, you don't need to do it again.
Right. It makes sense not to have a kind of unnecessary ceremony and getting a whole bunch of people into a crowded space. Like, that just seems like a really bad idea right now.
It does.
So,
like, honestly, just like re-air the clip with like a fun little chyron that says, "We taped this in 2019. It's fine. It's fine."
Each half of the semifinal already figured out. And then the Netherlands will stay in slot 23. That was drawn in, I think it was at the March delegation meeting for Netherlands' position in the grand final. The other auto qualifiers will stay with their assigned semifinals. So another big organizational aspect of this is if you have tickets, like, you don't have to worry about reticketing. And I think that was probably one of the biggest issues. I think they're still trying to figure out the ticket situation because we don't know if it's going to be like what plan they're going forward with. But like, I think they're doing a great job of eliminating as many potential headaches ahead of time. In terms of the various plans that are in play, they've also revealed what their plan is for any sort of remote broadcast if they do have to do plan C or plan D. That's where a delegation, well, plan C is the one where the individual delegations will film their performance remotely. And then plan D is where everybody is remote. And they released what some of the guidelines are going to be for those recordings. And it's a little bit more stringent than I was expecting, which is kind of funny. The session where the recording takes place is a 60-minute studio session, and you can do up to 3 takes. And the head of delegation must be present during this recording time. So you pretty much have like one shot to try to get your performance squared away. So make sure that all of the rehearsals are taken care of, all of that. And then the individual broadcasters will be in consultation with the Dutch broadcasters to make sure that tech standards are the same, any special setups that need to happen, particularly if there are going to be any graphics or VR, AR trickery added into the performance, because that's the other thing. There's not supposed to be anything extra in the performance. So no audience, no visual effects, no confetti, no drone shots, no water, and no green screen.
They are trying to set just sort of like the most level playing field they can. Everybody gets an hour. Everybody's studio is set up as relatively similar to if everybody can be on the stage. Everybody has access to the same elements.
Exactly. Yes. And also, since not every country is doing a national final, you can't use the national final performance as your performance. You can still use the same stage. You just can't use that specific performance of it. Like any audience would have to go home, like all the confetti swept up, all of that. But yeah. And then the performances have to be delivered by the end of March, which I'm guessing is in conjunction with the head of delegation meeting that happens in March, where they hand over the songs and the stage plans anyway. So I think it's just one more element that is part of that package.
Just one more thing on that drive, just sort of an MPEG file of the performance.
Yes. So the performances are not to be published before May. We'll see how leaks happen between March and May. Hopefully there's security in that, but we'll see what happens.
We'll see how that goes. A fire hose spray of logistics has happened, and then we are starting to get little bits and pieces of artists, including like a few more artists, and in one case a song announcement. The big one that popped up, Cyprus, is going to be sending Elena Tsagkrinou, who will be singing El Diablo. Elena was a semifinalist on Greece Got Talent and the backstage host for The Voice of Greece back in 2016. She's previously been part of a band Otherview and went solo in 2018. The song is expected in March, which does not surprise me. Yeah, it's just like we're going to have 20 songs drop in March.
Yeah, it's going to probably be the absolute last day. So kind of dreading that episode.
Yeah, just like apologies in advance for the episode where Mike and I have literally heard the songs 5 minutes before we tape, but everybody is going to drop them on the same day.
Yes. All of our critiques will be in haiku. It'll be fine. So
one of them is just going to be me screaming.
Yes.
But anyways, Cyprus is not messing around this year. But the songwriters on the song worked on She Got Me, so Switzerland 2019 did very well. You Let Me Walk Alone, Germany 2018 did very well. And Only Teardrops, Denmark 2013, did very well. I just love when they drop all of this information. Like, the production designer is the same person who did Conchita staging. So again, not messing around. On the other hand, with that list, though, is I feel like sometimes you'll see movies that'll just be like, from the producer of Get Out. Where it's like, okay, yes, you gave money to that thing and it did very well. But Jordan Peele wrote that. That's a different person.
And also just dropping all of this information in November, but then just being like, oh yeah, you're not going to hear any of it for like another 4 months. Be like, but I want to hear El Diablo now.
Yeah, like you can't tell me that the song is like, just announce the artist and just like sit on the fact that you've got this song called El Diablo. Just like tease me that in like February and be like, hello, we're Cyprus again. We are playing to win. Here's our list of songwriters and the song is called El Diablo.
Yeah. Like, I mean, particularly with this season where it's just like, it does seem like everything is going to be happening at the last minute. Like just trickle out, like just drop some breadcrumbs. Like,
yeah, drop some breadcrumbs because like as we record, it is not yet December. Anyways, Cyprus is very excited. It feels like they're playing to win.
Yeah, and I think Bulgaria is also playing to win. Victoria released a new single in the last couple weeks called Ugly Cry.
So tell me that you love my better side. Show you my beautiful lies. Never my ugly cry, so I don't have to worry when you leave.
it's going to be one of up to 6 songs that will be up for consideration for Eurovision. She did one of the writing camps this past summer, and has a lot of tracks in progress. Yeah, it seems like Bulgaria is just kind of adopting this approach of being like, all right, well, let's just kind of float these ideas and see what the audience response is.
Oh yeah, just like some very quiet focus grouping, and I'm here for it. Just like, do you guys like this?
To answer that question, yes, I do. This is exactly Mike Nip.
Okay. I have not listened to it yet because as soon as they said that this was one of 6 songs, I'm like, I would like a second one before I listen to the first one because I'm weird like that.
Oh, interesting. The song's available on YouTube. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. It's also available on Spotify, and that means it's the first song that is part of Eurovision selection season. Plus, there are some of the songs from FiK that have started trickling onto Spotify. So I've started putting together our
You're
mega
just very
playlist.
excited that we get to make the playlist.
Oh, I love this. Really, this is my favorite project that comes out of this podcast.
And then the thing I like about Bulgaria's strategy is like Cyprus is like real excited right now. They're like, we have a song, and I feel like they were very excited last year. Like, we have a song, and then their song came out, and it could maybe use some focus grouping. Bulgaria, very smart, realizing that again, not December yet. Let's dip a toe in the water and see what people think of this.
And even if this isn't the song that ultimately gets chosen, like, it's still keeping her like in the mix.
I was going to say it's very good online engagement for your artist.
Yeah. So I mean, if anything, it's just gonna be like, well, you've got a 6-song LP in the work, or EP rather, in the works. So
it's like drop a fun little EP in May.
I am definitely buying what Victoria is selling. So thank you, Victoria.
Mike, it's the first of the month, and you know what that means.
Yeah, I do.
I forget every single month, and like every single month on the very last day of the year at 6 p.m., YouTube tells me, hello, there is a new Sanit video. At this point, I feel like the little image that YouTube shows you as like the promo for the video just keeps getting creepier.
Yeah, as with the other entries in the Freaky Trip to Rotterdam series, there's a lot going on. This month's entry is a cover of Portugal's Amar Pelos Dois, set with a Father Christmas, Michael Jackson, what are the other bingo balls?
Face painting, dance break.
Oh, weird face morphing things. Oh,
yeah.
Oh,
yes. Oh, in hindsight, in the moment, I was just like, this is very weird. Now in hindsight, I'm just like, oh, it all makes sense with the face morphing.
Yeah.
With the face morphing and the Michael Jackson.
Yes. And there's children, but like one wearing like a Captain America costume or something. It's, again, a lot of imagery.
It's a lot of visuals. And like, I feel like this song in particular, I like that we get more covers of this song because it does prove to me that, like, regardless of singer, it's a very beautiful song that I think is a great vocal showcase for many singers. But also, like, the whole point of, like, the performance of this song was, like, you don't need all these fancy lights. You don't need all of these things in your performance. It can just be a beautiful song.
Yep.
And I feel like no one told Sanit's creative partner on these videos that, because I feel like we got, like, more things than we have gotten in recent videos.
Yeah. But I will say, I feel like this is one of the more cohesive entries in the series. Like, it was all kind of creepy, but it's like this sort of Baroque Christmas storytelling. I don't know, like it didn't feel as jarring in the sense of being like, oh, what's going on here? Like, there was a flow to it, except for the part where she like turns into God. Like, is she God or Jesus or both? Or we have a link to the video.
Yeah, we have a link to the video.
Someone please explain the video to us. Someone
please explain what that. I think that's what it is for me. Is that, like, I feel like they're very confident that their concepts are coming across to everyone, and I'm just like, no, please make it explicit in the video description what is going on.
Yeah,
I am confused.
Yeah, I don't, and it's also just kind of reminding me of like junior year seminar in like film studies classes, where it's just like, oh, well, this is what the director meant. It's like, okay, sure.
Is it? The moment I had with it was like, okay, the song happened, And then there was the dance break. And during the dance break, I'm like, this is like how in the 90s, Michael Jackson would make music videos that were like 10 minutes long. And like part of it was just him dancing over scatting.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was the Michael Jackson quote at the end, like, oh no.
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, okay, this is exactly what this is supposed to be evoking.
Mm-hmm.
So congratulations, Sunit. I caught that one.
Yeah.
Although I did not catch the face morphing until now.
Yeah.
I'm going, oh.
It was a good dance break. Like she's got
Oh yeah,
some
no,
moves,
the dance break was good.
Yeah. So I have no idea what to expect for when the new year rolls around. So get hype, I guess. So
I'm gonna do what I do every month, which is completely forget that this video series exists until I'm reminded of it.
Yep. It'll be like listening to Euphoria at the end of the ESC 250 countdown, and then the Sunit video drops. Yeah,
and it's also going to be Euphoria.
Mm-hmm, yeah. It probably will be.
Honestly, it probably will be.
Okay.
You heard it here first. Might cut this out if it's wrong.
Okay. Don't think I won't retroactively correct the record. So,
Episode 99B, the version where we erased the pit where we said that Sunit was going to be singing Euphoria.
Yep. So,
elsewhere in selections, this is just sort of like a quick yes or no. Is this person from Eurovision 2020 going to participate in Eurovision 2021 at all?
Mm-hmm.
Croatia. Damir will not be there. He did not have a song that he liked for Dora, so he will not be in Dora.
I think he'll be back at some
He'll
point.
be back, yes.
Like he's won a lot of these competitions, and I don't think he'll be a stranger to this. So.
Obviously, if he came back with a song, I feel like he would do well, but I like that he's being like, I don't have something that's up to my standard.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I could see him being an internal selection at some point if Croatia goes back to that. So
exactly. Similarly, Finland, Aksel will not be in Eurovision 2021. He did not submit an entry to UMK. Apparently, he considered it, but decided not to, especially given how uncertain 2021 is at the moment. And also was not all that comfortable with the idea of a fast pass, even if it were offered. So there's that.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed. I feel like he got a really raw deal. And like I say that as one of the only people I think who liked his song.
It grew on me this year.
Yeah, and I think he would have been both he and Damir would have really benefited from like the pre-party season and the lead up to Eurovision, where people would have the opportunity to kind of warm up to them, like really engage with their song, and like just given the timing of everything, nobody had that chance. And so I hope we see Aksel at some point, because he's got a good set of pipes. So yeah. Over in Lithuania, the ROOP announced that they will be using their fast pass. So they yes, finally somebody's using one. And yes, so they will be part of the Pabandom is now final. Still kind of figuring out what the details of that will be. They're still working through submissions and stuff for the process, and there's not even a clear sense of how many entries there will be, what the full process is, but the program should get started sometime around January 16th. It may be announcing the artist on the 16th and then going into weekly shows. They're not even really sure how many shows there are going to be, but I think they're still trying to stick to the format that they were using last year, and this is not a backdoor to going back to the marathon days, because no, we like Pabandom is now. Please stick with that.
Please stick with Pabandom is now. I am so hype about getting to watch Pabandom is now and then watch 5 minutes of a Melissa McCarthy movie translated into Lithuanian this January.
Nature is healing. Let's see. And then in terms of other selection processes, France has some more details about their process. C'est vous qui décidez. They are planning on having it be a one-night national final that'll be held sometime in January. Still waiting to hear what the date will be on that one, but they're expecting there to be 12 songs competing for their slot at Eurovision. And congrats to France, who won Junior Eurovision this past weekend. Ben,
congratulations to France.
Yay. Did you watch any Junior Eurovision?
After learning that they had won via Twitter, I watched 1 minute and 10 seconds of their song, and that was enough for me. Congratulations, France.
All right.
Like that's nothing against that song. It's just not my flavor of pop music.
Mhm.
It is very much a junior Eurovision song. Again, congratulations, France.
All right. Yes. Your 1 minute 10 seconds is 70 seconds more than I watched of Junior Eurovision. So this is not a Junior Eurovision's podcast. Just
This is you have many choices in your Eurovision podcast selection. We thank you for choosing ours, but also we will not be talking about Junior Eurovision.
Yes. No.
Norway at this point, I believe, is just trolling me specifically as the person who made a PowerPoint presentation about their selection process this year for like a fun early in the pandemic like variety show.
Yeah.
Where I explained to an audience that mostly did not know what Eurovision or Melodi Grand Prix were, what that was and how things kind of went sideways this year. Norway, as we have discussed, is using kind of the same general format as last year, except they have now detailed things that it's somehow more complicated. I'm very concerned, Mike.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
agree with
just
the whole trolling thing.
Yeah. Because like just on my big bulletin board with like pieces of paper and red string connecting things to try and figure this out, there are 12 finalists in the finals, 6 auto qualifiers, and 20 contenders, which feels very similar to last year, except somehow more because there are more auto qualifiers now.
Yeah,
there are more everything because there were 10 last time, I think.
Yeah. So one more auto qualifier, and they're adding in a second chance round. So there will be an additional.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Finalists
Because there are 5 rounds of 4, which we had this year, plus a second chance round to give us 6 qualifiers total.
Yeah.
And giving us 12 finalists overall.
Yes.
The second chance round will be Sunday, February 14th, which means we can extrapolate the rest of the schedule from that.
Yep. Yeah. The weekend of the 13th will just be a very full Norwegian weekend. I'm hoping that's not a Super Saturday. It might be though. But
It might be. The thing that I would love them to drop is, okay, what is the backup plan for if online voting goes bad this year?
I have to wonder if maybe that is part of the reason that they've tweaked the format a little bit, because they're also debuting 2 of the auto qualifiers on the first show. So it may, because they're doing the same thing that they did this year, where they're announcing who's competing and the one auto qualifier on Monday, releasing all of the tracks, and then having the show on Saturday, and then repeating that process. So perhaps having the extra auto qualifier in there is going to allow them a little bit of time, or a little bit of breathing room maybe, for the initial round of voting, and then, I don't know, figuring things out as they go, kind of like how they did this year. And yeah. But yeah, hopefully like they've learned a lot in the last 12 months. So and then there's a whole bunch of stuff coming up this week. Sweden is announcing the artists for Melfest. So this episode's dropping on Tuesday. So by the time this ends up in your pod feed, should know the first 9. They'll do 9 on Tuesday, 9 on Wednesday, and then the remaining 10 on Thursday. Song details will trickle out as they do with Melfest. But yeah, so that's a major thing to look forward to. Scandy Pop's been all over it on Twitter. So
they are very hype, and so am I. Estonia's songs are going to be revealed on Estee Lauder 2021 on Saturday, December 5th. So this Saturday, we will have more knowledge about the Estonian songs, which this was looking like it was going to be like a bunch of returning previous Eurovision people. So I'm very excited to see what they have cooked up this year.
I do too. And like, they do such a good job on their videos. Like, it's, yeah, they're all such high quality. And yeah, I'm not sure if this special is going to be airing all of the videos, or if it's just going to be little clips and then telling everybody to go to YouTube. I mean, go to YouTube, that's where they will live. But yeah, it's cool that there's just going to be like something to watch this weekend. So that should be, need to double check on the time, but I think that's around 2:45 Eastern on Saturday. So yeah, and then Festivali Këngës still waiting on when their actual dates are going to be, but they're targeting December 17th through 26th, weather permitting. But the stage is mostly built outside in Tirana, so yeah, that's something to look forward to. And we'll be getting into like our picks for FIK in the next episode. Yeah, there's a lot going on right now, and we have a lot more to discuss. Yeah,
because it turns out there's it turns out the answer to the question of what's Albania's whole deal is slightly more complicated than. I mean, I expected it to be complicated, but
yeah, we were planning this episode before like all of this news dropped, and really what I wanted to do was just kind of pay so much attention to Albania in December because usually FIK is the only Eurovision thing that's happening, and yeah, so that all goes down in December, and then we don't really hear from Albania again until if they release an English version of their track or do any sort of remastering of their track. But yeah, like from December to March, they're usually pretty quiet. And then they may be at the pre-parties, but yeah, there's just not too much to talk about. So I kind of feel like Albania gets kind of swept under the rug a lot of the time. And just given how last year's FIK was particularly controversial, and again, that may just be part of that controversy is just it was the only thing that was happening, so everybody was talking about it.
So we're just like, ooh, controversy.
Yes, but one of the other controversial aspects that came up were people complaining about a performance during, I think it was the second semifinal, where it was somebody who competed at the 11th FIK. Just being like, oh, we just have 2 more regular performances to get through. Why are there all of these special things? And then the ESC Albania account scolding people on Twitter being like, no, FIK's legacy is really important. A lot of people were persecuted after that contest. And I was just like, excuse me? And,
I love moments of Twitter like that where it's just like, first of all, how dare you?
Yeah. And it was just like, wait, I started Googling immediately after reading that. And yeah, I got really interested in what was going on in the Festivali Këngës that
and I have very strategically tried to leave myself in the dark for the inevitable episode where you get to explain things to me.
Right. So that's this episode. So I guess that's a good place to start. Ben, what do you know about Albania?
Okay. So I guess within the context of the Eurovision Song Contest, I know that they are. My brain just like lit up with like 5 different things at once, and I'm trying to sort them into an order.
Yeah.
In general, with Albania, I know that they are sort of part of Eastern Europe. They're sort of like that part of things, but they were not like a former SSR.
Correct.
I tend to lump them in there, but they are not that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Eurovision wise, I know that they tend to be one of the nations that I feel like strongly follow their own drumbeat. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, I have a hunch that's probably connected to Festivali Këngës, because there are sometimes where like I'm like it or when I say that they follow their own drumbeat, I feel like that's just a very nice way of saying that oftentimes they are not a country whose song I enjoy. Or where it is where I can appreciate it on like artistic merits, but also it's just not for me.
Okay, I think that's a fair assessment. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Which I mean, we'll get into it. Knowledge about Albania, at least from an American context, I think is like a lack of knowledge of it is not all that surprising. Albania is located on the west side of the Balkan Peninsula. It's kind of nestled among Greece, North Macedonia, Montenegro, Kosovo. It's right across from Italy, where the Adriatic meets the Ionian Sea. So if you like imagine the boot of Italy and where the heel of that boot is, Albania is on the other side of the water from there.
Okay.
So like geographically speaking, really nice piece of real estate. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, everybody knows that that's a really nice piece of real estate, so it is prime target for conquering. And yeah, unfortunately, that's been a major part of Albania's history, where it's just getting absorbed. It's either getting absorbed into some form of empire or liberating itself, struggling to recover from that liberation, and being vulnerable to another conquest, basically. So yeah, like in the 20th century, it was part of the Ottoman Empire. It achieved independence after World War I, but it was just really unstable at that point, and then got invaded by Italy and the fascists during the lead up to World War II. And yeah, so it's just been this very unfortunate cycle. During World War II, the Communist Party in Albania was one of the major sources of resistance in the European theater. And this was the case in a number of areas that where the Communist Party was able to provide the resistance to like the German forces. And because of that, once the war ended, the communists were in a strong position to continue being in power. And so I think that's probably where the SSR connection is coming in, because even though Albania was not an SSR, it was very closely aligned with the USSR.
Okay.
Particularly the Albania's leader, Enver Hoxha, who was a huge fan of Stalin. Like, they were both very hardcore Marxists. And Enver Hoxha, he led the Albania's Communist Party during World War II. He assumed the governmental leadership after the war. And by aligning with the USSR, they received a whole bunch of aid during the recovery time up until Stalin's death in 1953. Now, with Albania being right by Yugoslavia, Yugoslavia didn't fully line up with Stalin. Like they were also communist, but they were just like, hey, Stalinism's incredibly harsh and incredibly brutal. Like the song 1944, like that's about Stalinism and the horrors of that regime. Even though Albania and Yugoslavia are neighbors, they were not friendly neighbors during that time. And after Stalin died in 1953 and Khrushchev took over and kind of started pulling back from some of the more severe Stalinist policies, Hoxha was not a fan of that at all. So, like, friendship ended with USSR. Now China is my best friend.
Now China is my friend.
Yeah. Because Mao Zedong, who was the leader in China at the time, he was also very Stalinist in his approach. So they got along great. Yay.
Yay.
Yeah. And that was up until Chairman Mao died in 1976. So, but again, that was a source of financial support for Albania during that time. So that's just kind of setting up a little bit of the context of what's going on. In terms of broadcasting in Albania, I managed to find this one paper by Idrit Idrizi, who is a professor, I believe he's based in Germany. And it was a paper called Magic Apparatus and Window to the Foreign World, the Impacts of Television and Foreign Broadcasts on Society and State-Society Relations in Socialist Albania. So in this paper, just kind of talking about the history of television in Albania and how difficult it is to assemble an historical record during this time, just because, like, being a particularly Stalinistic regime.
Like that really affects your history.
Yeah, and just really self-enforced isolation at this point. Like, it's record keeping is going to be dubious at best, and it just relies so much on oral history, and you need to find people who are willing to talk in providing oral histories. So
yes, Mike, have you read the book Say Nothing?
I have not.
That has nothing to do with Albania. That has everything to do with the IRA and Ireland in the 80s. It is fascinating, but a huge part of the book is oral history, and Boston University comes into play because they had a massive oral history archive that was largely recorded under the promise that essentially the various pieces of it would not go live until the people who would contribute to it had died.
Oh, wow.
Because, yeah. Spoiler alert, some of it got released before then.
Yeah, I mean, this is the kind of environment that Albania is dealing with in, like, for a good chunk of the 20th century. So, but getting back to the television broadcasting, TV was introduced to Albania in 1960. Broadcasts were for about 2 hours a day, 3 times a week, and was mostly in and around Tirana. Consistent broadcasting didn't really start happening until 1971. Color TV didn't arrive until 1981. And they didn't have, like, near 100% coverage for television until about 1986. So television's still relatively new compared to the US, where the US had, like, about a 40-year head start on television.
Okay.
To acquire a television, It would be about 10 months of wages. Plus, you had to be approved for purchase by the regime, and you probably needed to have some strings pulled to get that approval, because if anything in your background was suspect or in potentially any sort of threat to the regime, you weren't going to get approved for television.
No TV for you.
Right. From the government side of things, TV was never viewed as an efficient propaganda medium. I mean, part of that is just because a lot of people did not have television. And so the messaging, like, you're not just going to get bombarded with ads. There was still propaganda happening, but but since most people are not just kind of lounging around watching TV because that sort of behavior was just not part of the culture, any propaganda that you were going to see on TV was mostly about heroism, self-sacrifice, economizing, really serving the Stalinist ideal. For the people who did have TV or access to a TV, it was a major source of entertainment, particularly sports, and because watching TV was something to do. Like, Albania was incredibly poor at this time. It was a very stagnant economy with a very uninspired populace. So there just wasn't there wasn't like a raft of activities to draw from. It's like, all right, I guess just watching TV. But interesting, foreign broadcasts could come in because, like, airwaves do not recognize international boundaries. And given where Albania is located, they're going to get, like, the southern part of Albania is going to get stuff from Greece, and the northern part is going to get stuff from Yugoslavia, and the part along the coast is going to get broadcasts from Italy, just because that's how airwaves work. And it wasn't illegal to consume those sort of broadcasts at first. It did eventually become illegal.
But then they saw what was on Italian television.
Yeah, spoiler.
I was about to say, I said that knowingly, but I'm just thinking of the Vinny Videcci sketches from SNL.
I'm not familiar with those.
Okay, it is Bill Hader doing a broad Italian stereotype and also just smoking like 5 cigarettes.
Okay, all right. So getting this all back to the Festivali Këngës. The first contest was held in December 1962. It was held over 4 nights, and it was on the radio. Again, TV was not really an active medium at that point. A lot of this is Google translated from Albanian, so, like, this is not going to be a great translation. But according to the RTSH website, which is the broadcaster, they have a whole history page of, like, each individual contest. Both in music and lyrics, the first festival remains the most courageous and successful attempt of Albanian artistic creativity, which I think is a pretty good log line for what the festival is trying to accomplish. The main purpose of it was a means of providing neutral, light music in the general format of a festival, kind of like Sanremo, which had been happening in Italy for a handful of years at this point. The first winner of this was Vasse Zella with the song Famiglie I She would go on to win the festival 10 more times over the next couple of decades.
Wow.
Yeah. There's kind of a reason for that. First festival, huge success. 1963, no winner is declared. One of the contestants was persecuted for mispronouncing some of the lyrics and offering a interpretation of the song that the regime did not agree with. 1964, again, no winner was declared. Like, they only went up to second place because the songs were just not up to snuff, according to whoever was making those decisions. So yeah, by 1965, performers were understandably kind of skittish about participating, and the songs were pretty much vehicles for propaganda at this point. So, like, if you're doing the festival, you kind of know what you're signing up for, and it's like, all right, fine. Yeah, not great. Also happening around this time, and granted, there's a whole bunch of stuff that's happening. Like, I should have started this early by saying that this is going to be a rather reductive history because there's just so much interlacing of politics, even though Eurovision is not a political contest.
Drink.
Oh my goodness, is FIK a political song contest? So in 1967, there's a speech that Hoxha gives where he declares his intention to eliminate all religion. This is kind of more a formal declaration of what has been informally enforced during his entire leadership. Yeah, like
and of course the perfect place to say this is like your light entertainment competition.
Yes, this was not at FIK. This was
okay.
This was at
okay.
I think it is an indication of why it happens around Christmas time. And I wasn't able to find anything to prove this, but it is an alternate event to what would be happening around December 25th and other religious observances as well. Like, I mean, even though Hanukkah is not like a particularly like high holy day in the Jewish faith, like it's still like a religious celebration, and Ramadan could be happening around that time. And it's just kind of like one other step to kind of eliminate the presence of any sort of religious celebration.
It's like when your office says we're having a winter holiday party in December.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the climate that the contest is happening in at this point. Goes on for a few more years. Nothing too monumental, at least from what was listed on the website, happened in the late 60s. In the early 70s, the regime notices that the youth of Albania are not really motivated in any particular way. And so they're kind of trying to experiment with like going against the ultra conservatism that has been kind of the party line at this point. And it goes into what's known as the liberal intermezzo period. So just trying to, like, I don't know, hello, fellow teens.
Hello, fellow teens.
So they put a new person in charge at RTSH to kind of focus more on entertainment in the airwaves. Television is now becoming a more usable medium. The contest has its first televised version in 1971. And now new performers are starting to compete. Part of the reason that Vasizela won so many times was she was one of the few people who entered several times.
She was a very frequent entrant.
Exactly. Yes. So they're now like just getting some new people into the mix, and they're being a little bit looser on I don't know, micromanaging the aspects of the contest. That is until the 1972 edition, which was FIK number 11. And Western influence is definitely present in these entries. So before the episode, Ben, I sent you some links to some of the videos. There was one of Vasizela's performance, and then there was one for Lindita Theodori's Cafe Flora Plot Mi
I watched both of those that you sent me, and like I had just been about to mention that, yeah, like having until you got to this is FIK 11, I went, oh no, but like had listened to the first one, Vasizela's song. I'm like, okay, this is good, but it also feels like a lot of sort of mid 50s, early 60s music to me, where I'm like, I was about to say this sounds like my parents, but that's very insulting to my parents, who were also not that much alive in that era. But like it feels like. It feels like a different era in music.
Mm-hmm.
It fits like light entertainment, like what I would call light entertainment is like, this is what I expect from that, where it's pleasing. I think of light entertainment in the same way I think of it as the word humorist, in that, well, you're kind of going for it, but I don't think it's funny.
Right.
Compared to Lindita's song, I'm like, oh, they're actually keeping up with trends, because like it feels very much kind of like late 60s, early 70s, like it has some movement to it, and I liked it. Yeah,
I really enjoyed that song and that performance, and that was one of the songs that was performed at the most recent FIK, which sparked this whole thing. I mean, like it's a pop song that pops. And again, this is Google translated lyrics, but the story of the song is about some girls who are hanging out in a flower shop and see some boys there and start flirting with them. And yeah, the regime is not happy about that. They're not happy about a lot of the entries in that year's contest. And the organizers of the contest are declared enemies of the people, which is, a very serious thing in a Stalinistic repressive regime. Like that.
Yes.
If you're declared like an enemy of the people, you will either be executed or sent to a labor camp or some other
or sent to a labor camp
punishment.
And executed.
Yeah, like it is bad news. And the person who was put in charge of RTSH was sent to prison. And in response to what happened, Hoxha said, the spread of certain vulgar alien tastes in music and art, the adoption of extravagant and ugly fashions, and unpleasant behavior contrary to socialist ethics and the positive traditions of our people, degenerate importations as long hair, extravagant dress, screaming jungle music, coarse language, shameless behavior, and so on. If the influences and manifestations of the bourgeois revisionist way of life are not nipped in the bud, they open the way to the corruption and degeneration of people which are so dangerous to the cause of socialism. So, yeah, that's kind of the new standard. The liberal intermezzo reached its conclusion in 1973. The Sanremo Festival was pretty much considered the symbol of degeneration, and eventually consuming foreign broadcasts was going to be criminalized, as was growing sideburns or wearing blue jeans or wearing a mini skirt or any sort of seductive dress with big sunglasses and singing any sort of foreign songs. At this point, everything about FIK was becoming micromanaged, from song content to costuming to how people move about the stage. Like it was that level of specificity, because you do not want to get anywhere off message from what the regime wanted to communicate. And even RTSH called the 1976 festival the most politicized. Yeah, it's real bad. So with how the 1960s ended with Hoxha declaring his intention to eliminate all religion, around 1976 is when Albania declared itself an atheist state. Like, they reworked their constitution and it was officially atheist. So yeah, that's part of the environment not all that long ago. In the 1980s, Albania's in really bad economic shape. Population is miserable, as you might imagine. And Albania doesn't really have any international friends at this point. Like, they've completely iced out Russia. They've iced out Yugoslavia, even though they're next door neighbors. They've there was already kind of a falling out with China even before Mao Zedong passed, because they were opening up to like United States and other Western partners. And yeah, like it's like Albania's just in this really rough transition period. Also, Hoxha dies in 1985. Yeah, there's just a lot of internal turmoil. FIK is kind of coming out of this as like not as politicized as before, and ordinary citizens are now starting to buy TVs. Like they're
okay.
And like, even though international broadcasts were technically criminalized, they're like, it was really difficult to enforce because, again, airwaves don't really acknowledge
don't acknowledge the fact that,
say, an inspector passed by a house and saw a antenna pointed toward a foreign neighbor. Like, the person inside would be like, "Oh, yeah, the wind must have done that. I'll get that fixed." And yeah, so it was enforcement of absorbing international content was just not present. So there was still this window to the outside world that was available. Censorship is still in place, but artists at this point aren't being persecuted as frequently, and in some cases are actually being encouraged by the government to debate ideas publicly. Not necessarily introduce new ideas, but debate the ideas that are already there. And yeah, kind of opening up it doesn't seem like there's any relief in sight until, as we learned in the most recent Eurovision again, Eurocat tearing down the Berlin Wall in November 1989. So,
Yes.
yeah. So, Berlin Wall comes down, USSR dissolves, other communist countries are also reorganizing their governments, and Yugoslavia begins to dissolve as well. But there are some internal conflicts there that lead to military combat, and Albania is drawn in because even though Yugoslavia as a whole was not really on friendly terms with Albania, the Kosovo region had a lot of crossover with Albania. So yeah, there was a lot of cooperation there, and this was like the first bout of optimism that had happened for Albania in decades.
Thinking about that Eurovision again,
Mm-hmm.
like the sense of optimism just with so many nations.
Mm-hmm.
Realizing that it was not just Insieme, but like almost every song was just about this new moment of togetherness.
Yes. Yes.
Like that also has me interested to see what next year looks like at the contest.
Oh, exactly.
Because we have suddenly had another big event that brings Europe together in a way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And even though there's still turmoil happening in Albania at this point, like they're no longer in a communist system necessarily. Like they're getting election reforms in place. The economic system though is still on very shaky ground, and they ended up in this sort of pyramid scheme setup to try to pay down prior debts. And when that pyramid collapsed, it almost led to a civil war in 1997. On the FiK side of things, they're really starting to open up. Like in 1992, Albanian expats were allowed to compete in the contest for the first time because it was really the first opportunity that people from outside the country could get into the country. And yeah, it really was this sort of sense of like, okay, it's safe to come home now. It's also easing into new content that could be in the contest. Like now that there's no longer this Stalinistic regime, like you could have references to God in your song or topics addressing the world outside of Albania, and not this. It's no longer this propaganda machine of trying to pretend that everything is okay and that it's all about heroism and economizing. And like the 1998 contest was a support mechanism for Kosovo because Kosovo was going through their own internal turmoil at that point. And yeah, it was just kind of this opening up period for Albania. By the time the 2000s rolled around, there was much more stability, and integrating with the rest of Europe seemed to be a major goal of the country as a whole. Part of that also happened on television, where there's now all of these different competition formats that are airing on TV. So FiK is no longer the only game in town. There are other music festivals. So now you have all of these like music competitions, and the idea of Eurovision, which is something that was viewable during the 70s and 80s, like by way of Yugoslavia or by way of Greece or by way of Italy. And in 2001, they start floating the idea of, oh, maybe Albania should be competing at Eurovision. Doesn't really come to fruition until 2004, where the winner of FiK 2003 would go on to represent Albania for the first time. That performance was Angeza Shahini with her song The Image of They finished in 7th place.
As I said at the top, is that Albania tends to be a flavor of thing that is not always my flavor of thing. There were moments of that song that I enjoyed, but I feel like much like Sanit's song this year, it was a journey.
Yeah, I'm really fascinated by this one, partly because like I'm surprised that their first entry was in English. And I think part of that was like 2004, like that was during the era where it's like, well, everybody should sing in English because it's going to be all televote anyway, and from a gameplay standpoint, it totally makes sense.
There was that, and then also the mix of that song felt weirdly off to me. in that like the instrumental was almost louder than the singer, and I was like straining to hear her.
Yeah, and granted, the video that I sent you was the actual Eurovision performance, so that could have been just a product of the 2004 contest, rather than like the studio track.
Oh, totally.
Albania has been welcomed to the party. Albania has entered the chat. And since then, FiK has been the selection method for Eurovision. Their best finish was in 2012 with Rona Nishlu's Sus, which finished in 5th place. And they've made the final 9 out of 16 times, and it's been about half Albanian, half English. So I don't think the language aspect is necessarily a deal breaker. Most of their entries have kind of finished mid-table, like either 16th or 17th place for the ones that have made it to the final. Like they have missed the final a few times, but it's a pretty wild history that just really kind of, it's fascinating to me just how much of what I think gets associated with Albania's identity at Eurovision is locked up in this very complicated and tragic history. And it's really built up my appreciation, particularly for their 2019 entry, which was about like asking people to come home to Albania and just be like, yes, it is time to come home. And it's just like, yeah, that's like, it's been almost 30 years since things have changed. And like I'm so looking forward to FiK this year.
And just like thinking of recent entries, like the stuff that has resonated with me more from Albania has been like, I really loved Mal from a few years ago. That is much more my speed when it comes to Albania. Sus, I think now understanding more of Albania's history, I appreciate that performance more. Even though I rewatched that video because you sent it to me, and I still like that is sort of like a prime example of this is not for me. And admittedly, I have not looked at the lyrical content of what she's singing about, like, but like but it feels in the same vein as something like a 1944 to me, in that this is singing from a place of historical pain. Yes.
I think it's historical pain, and I believe that was the year where there was a really tragic bus crash that happened during Eurovision week in Albania. So I think just just that part of the tragedy did feed into it was either the semifinal performance or that final performance. But I don't know. I really appreciate that entry because she just sings the hell out of it. But
that is a very difficult song.
Particularly thinking of just how controversial we keep calling it controversial. I don't know if it necessarily was. Like it seems like that they're like still really trying to like ingratiate with it with the rest of Europe, and like having a jury that is more international folks than Albanians, like that seemed like an overstep. And I can also understand like why something like Metana would be a divisive entry, because like even though it's been 30 years since like the wall came down, there are a lot of people who've lived through the really tough times. And I think there's still going to be that divide of being used to how FiK was and where FiK can go. And I'm not articulating this part particularly well.
Right, but like, just sort of like wanting to be a more open nation and maybe moving the slider a little bit too far in the direction of a worldliness that does not necessarily that the rest of the nations may be not necessarily ready to go with. Because like I was thinking about what I know about Albania, and I remember this decision last year being controversial at the time and not making sense to me because I didn't have the background on it. But I can see how that would feed, how suddenly having 3 out of the 5 judges at FiK be non-Albanian.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just fascinating to like really dig into this. And like I said, this is very pared down. Like I did not get into like all of the like what is Stalinism? Let's talk about all the different flavors of communism and just how FIK, it's a good entry point into exploring all of the complications of Albania's recent history.
Surprisingly recent.
That's the thing. Like there are a lot of people who had to experience this firsthand, and that's going to take a long time to heal. And I think one of the things that I'm most excited about with Albania for the 2021 contest is like this is I think the open up theme, they are particularly well positioned to embrace that. Like even though like the slogan for the contest is very rarely implemented into like the song selections, like there weren't a whole bunch of all aboard entries, or like celebrate diversity was a bizarre a bizarre category for 2017. But yeah, I think open up, like I mean Albania is still opening up, and I think they can embrace this. And
well, just thinking of when you mentioned that like they officially declared that they were an atheist state, I'm just like, oh, they're in like their angsty teen years. Mm-hmm. And like they are now sort of opening up and figuring out who they are as a country.
Yeah. And also with all of the organizational stuff that has happened, like this is the first time possibly ever that like Albania knows what semifinal they're in before FIK. They know like if they wanted to play next year strategically or like as an actual game, like they're in a position to do that. I'm very excited for selection season to get started.
Albania has not always been my taste, and like this batch of entries, like there's a lot of really good stuff in there.
Something to look forward to. And anything else you'd like to know about Albania at this time? I probably will not have the answers for it. But
I'm trying to think of the most ridiculous thing I could ask, knowing that you do not have the answers. But I will leave it there.
Okay. Well, then that's going to do it for this episode of the Euro What. Thank you for listening. The Euro What podcast is hosted by Mike Cohn, that's me, and Ben Smith.
That's me.
Comments, questions, feedback, memes, they can all be sent to us at eurowhatpodcast@gmail.com or on Twitter @eurowhat. You can subscribe to the Euro What on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are sold. When you subscribe, leave us a review, let us know how we're doing, and help other Eurovision fans find us. Next time on the Euro What, we're celebrating 100 episodes. Air horn noise!
Pew, 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 pew.
Woo! And we're going to make sense of what's new in